To talk geek stuff. It's the Geek Show with Calvin joining us from Mohawk Studios today. Good morning to you, Calvin.
Good morning, Mamo.
Good morning. And first up today, we're talking about a new religion, a new geek religion that has just become official in Sweden.
Yes, and it's threatening to spread to the US as well. This is the Missionary Church of Copymism. And the name Copymism comes from Copy Me.
Okay.
The idea, basically, it's a bunch of file sharers who are claiming that copying information is a sacred virtue. And while this on the face of it may seem like a reasonably laughable proposition by people who maybe just want to get away with file sharing, it is actually a very powerful and simple base philosophy that Copymism holds sacred, that knowledge should be shared to all, that the search for knowledge is sacred, the circulation of knowledge is sacred, and therefore the act of copying is sacred. So it's quite an interesting approach to take this and wrap it up in a religion that basically just to attempt to get some protection in the same way that many religions often do.
So they managed to actually get it officially recognised. Was that through a census, or how did they do that?
Just through the legal system within Sweden. They had to make 3 application attempts, but on the 3rd attempt, they got through. They satisfied all the Swedish requisites for a religion.
All right. I'd imagine it'd be somehow tied into the Pirate Party as well, no doubt.
Well, while it has been reported that way, they've denied any connection between the two organisations. So while it seems that it must be that way, it turns out not. No, they're denying it at the moment. There just happen to be 2, major, and I use the word in air quotes, pirate organisations coming out of Sweden at the moment.
There's a pirate party in New Zealand, isn't there?
I believe so. It's just very, very small at the moment.
Yeah. Maybe the religion might gain some traction here as well. Would you subscribe at all?
I would subscribe to a variant on it. Yes. I actually believe that copying is something that's intrinsically sacred from a genetic level upwards. That's what DNA does. It copies and it makes mistakes. That's how evolution works. But I come at it rather than from an idealistic point of view. I just come at it a pragmatic point of view. I think as the internet, becomes more and more part of the world, businesses that operate on the internet's strengths, i.e. the ability to make multiple copies for free, will just generally do better than businesses that fight it.
True.
And I just think that's a purely pragmatic approach.
Well, that links in very well with our next topic, and that is why the internet may have slowed down for many New Zealanders yesterday afternoon and into the evening, and possibly today as well. Yes,
well, my internet functionally died yesterday afternoon while I was trying to research today's show. And
to tell you the truth, it doesn't too crash hot today either. But anyway.
And basically, I think this could be a combination of factors. I think it could be partly the Game of Thrones effect. We already know that the season 2 debut sent New Zealand and US internet traffic through the roof.
Yes, now this was reported in the NBR at the beginning of April from the first episode of Game of Thrones. There was a massive internet traffic spike from Monday evening into the Tuesday,
Yeah. Now, I'm going to get slightly technical here, and let's talk about from this point on, by the way, I'd just like to point out that everything I say is conjecture, and it's conjecture just based on the fact that I've got a reasonable knowledge of most of the technologies that are being used here.
Okay.
So this is plausible, but I can't prove it.
Right.
Okay?
Sure.
So, prior to the 3 strikes laws and the Skynet laws and things like that, most people were downloading something like Game of Thrones through a tool like BitTorrent.
Yeah.
Now, what would happen is basically as soon as they start downloading this, they'll be pulling packets across from the States that will assemble to make an episode of Game of Thrones. And every ISP that starts seeing these packets duplicated will have them cached. So even without knowing the content, as long as people are dealing with unencrypted packets of data, the ISPs each one will only have to download one copy of Game of Thrones. And then all the other copies that people want will start coming from the cache.
From the cache from the ISP?
Potentially from the ISP, yes, because they're quite aggressive in their caching. Any packets which share duplicate information, they won't make the direct connection for. Now, I'm not sure if this applies to all torrent traffic, but even torrenting, you should start getting it from local peers more than international ones.
Yes, that's true.
So there's several levels of caching going on that as soon as you change to using VPNs or using encrypted Usenet accounts or any of the other things that people are moving to, it's absolutely impossible to cache that in any way, shape or form, because every connection will be encrypted. It will be a different packet of data coming across for the same episode of Game of Thrones.
Right.
So if 100,000 people want to watch Game of Thrones when it's released, it's fairly obvious that they're willing to pay for that, because a lot of people are paying quite a lot per gigabyte for the download. They're paying for VPN services to protect themselves, or they're paying for Usenet services to protect themselves. So there's money going to someone. It's just not going to the content creator.
Yeah.
The reason they're downloading it all in one big long bump is because they want it now.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. If I could get the latest episode of Game of Thrones for, in high quality for $3 to $5, right as it's released, I certainly would. I'd go for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And all we need to do to prevent, so that when Game of Thrones is released, it only needs cost the international pipes a couple of gigabytes to download a high quality copy. And then that could be locally served to everyone in New Zealand, and it needn't clog up the international pipes.
Yeah.
So, there are several things that could fix this. Business models or dropping the law against it, either of which would prevent the rest of New Zealand business suffering as a result of the file sharing law causing this shift in tactics to an incredibly inefficient way of delivering traffic.
It's interesting, though, with this law that's come in, and the notices that have been sent out. So far, the notices, as far as we know, have only related to music and very popular sort of pop international music. Nothing is related to video or moving pictures at the moment. So should people still be running in fear if they are in the practice of downloading HBO content? That are HBO even monitoring this, and are they even going to bother sending out any notices to New Zealanders?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, so far the evidence is no, they haven't. So we may be suffering this every time there's a big release. We might be suffering a huge loss in our international internet capability, purely because of people running overly paranoid from laws that aren't even being enacted. But who can blame them when the threat is so big? Yeah,
that's true. The threat is still there. And you say that that people are now changing to other ways of getting it by using virtual private networks, which tunnel the traffic through to the States, and is a less efficient way of getting these files.
Yes, because every VPN tunnel means that person, if they want to download a gigabyte of Game of Thrones in reasonable quality, they will have to download that from the States. And there's no way that file can ever be cached at this end,
right?
So, by the ISPs because of its encryption.
That's a really interesting point. And of course, also not only through BitTorrent, but also file lockers as well, which are based in the States and not cached locally. Yes. Well, that's something that perhaps needs to be a little bit more discussed with the ISPs and the content and copyright holders, and also the overlords of the internet to try and make this
maybe a discussion that needs to be had with a semblance of realism and pragmatism about it.
Yeah.
Rather than just because I can see that this will get blamed on the pirates.
Yes.
That it will be the fault of internet pirates that the internet has slowed down, and I actually think it's the fault of frustrated consumers who have been threatened with the idea that they're criminals, when all they want to do is be able to buy an episode of Game of Thrones for a reasonable price, and more to the point, to have it now so that they don't have to avoid mention of Game of Thrones for 2 or 3 weeks, so they can go and join in with the communities and the forums worldwide with everyone else who's seen Game of Thrones now.
Yeah, and or be locked into some weird contract with Sky where you buy a bunch of content that you don't actually want just to get to the one episode of a program that you do want. Thank you very much, Kelvin. CHELFYN, if you want to continue this discussion there on Twitter. Also at The Geek Show, 2 3s rather than 2 e's, thegeekshow.com. It's now